Greetings! So, as of recent, I've been getting very into hyper niche games that have been scratching itches I didn't know I had. Similar to how one might look for underground or lesser known music to spice up a playlist, I've been doing the same with my Steam library. Now, this isn't to say any game under this label is bad or has bad gameplay, because very few have played them. Sure, some games like this tend to be visually off-putting for most, but if you're anything like me and are willing to delve into the obscure or are already a fan of such games, then you might like what I've compiled into this video. Today, I've prepared a selection of games that, in my opinion, have very appealing gameplay features and mechanics, but for whatever reason, haven't been picked up by the all-powerful algorithms. My goal is to hopefully show them to more people, as it's coming up to that holly jolly season, so you may find some hidden gems to fill out your stockings. There's quite a mixed bag, from FPS to tower defense to stealth. So, without further ado, let's visit the first game. UBERSLAUGHTER is one of those games that fits nicely into the undefined Cruelty Squad-like genre, but this time Ultra Kill has entered the love triangle to influence things just a little bit. The game takes the shape of a horde shooter roguelike, akin to the likes of Call of Duty Zombies, and has everything you'd expect from such. Punchy guns, gambling, increasingly difficult waves of enemies, more gambling, and a tranquil intermission area to wind down between fights and chat to the friendly residents. And also gamble. The style of the game reminds me a lot of Serious Sam, specifically the second game, which I had a great time playing when I was younger. Although I don't necessarily mean the graphical style. There are some resemblances with the enemies and weapon design, but more so in the humour and overall vibe. It has this sort of MLG era undertone that is not overly present, but shines through in the form of the odd sound effect and weapon name, which I think fits nicely with how the rest of the game is presented. It's not enough to be off-putting, but is present enough to spice up the game with some humour. Speaking of weapons, their names definitely feed into the humour aspect, with them ranging from, this, to references of other media. I audibly giggled when I upgraded the Anton to the old man's country. Another thing that adds to the humour are the NPCs within the intermission area. I think these are best experienced firsthand, but here's a small taste of some of the dialogue.
Adrenaline's my choice of drug, baby. Nothing beats the rush of a high-speed chase to the feeling of leaving your competition in the dust. Live life in the fast lane, or get run over.
Our Reverender loves you, my child. You're welcome to come visit our humble town. You know who else has dementia?
Now, the gameplay. Upon playing for the first time, you're simply told to survive each round, accumulate vast riches, refine your arsenal, rescue the kitten, and slaughter them all. Then you're dropped into the intermission area for a period before being sent to round 1. You start with $0, 0 weapons, and 0 bitches. You must use your trusty mitts to smash anything that moves into a fine pulp, to work up enough cash for something more efficient. Once you have, keep up the grind until you clear the map of any and all life forms, and rinse repeat. By the time the first intermission rolls round, you'll have a substantial startup to begin your gambling addiction. Now, roll slots and trade stocks, until you either run out of money, this never happens trust, or you have enough to snowball your way through the upcoming waves. Now, there is no right or wrong way of playing. Use whatever weapons you want. Go at your own pace. Make your own how to win. Load in and warm up on the residents. Then, once you're in the first level, look for this weapon. Now, level up and get the required funds. Purchase Pumpin' Your Ma. Use it to clear out the next few waves. Then, once you're in the intermission, acquire another 100 grand. Use this money to upgrade Pumpin' Your Ma to Pumpin' Your Da. Congratulations, you have now won. Using this method, I managed to reach a high score of round 103, which took me just shy of 3 hours. Some notable things that happened during that run were the repeated crash of Scummy Santa's pyramid scheme's stock price that I just so happened to exploit for a total profit of $476 million. Whatever the hell's going on here. And, of course, reaching the big 1 billion. Alas, though, I did not rescue the kitten. All in all, the game's pretty solid. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it executes its gameplay well. My only minor issue being that once you get to this level of power, there isn't really a whole lot that can stop you that isn't your own mistakes. And once I got to round 50, I'd already bought out all the perks, and had enough money to unlock everything in the intermission level. This isn't to say I won't be coming back to the game every now and then to blast some creeps, gamble, and enjoy the mind-pumping soundtrack. It definitely has great replay value, despite the poor difficulty scaling into higher rounds. Although, in my opinion, I do think it's very on theme that the game lets you get to this absurd level of power. Now though, I think it's time to wind things down a bit, and head deep into the forests to somewhere more tranquil. Welcome to Gnomes, a game that has recently satisfied the masculine urge to build an empire of whimsical sprites from the ground up. First though, I'd like to mention that as of this video being uploaded, the game has not yet released, and the Steam page shows no official date. However, there will be a demo available at the time you're watching this, and as I had the pleasure of being invited to the playtest, from what I experienced, the game felt very polished and fleshed out, so you might not be waiting too long for an early access or full release. The game itself is a tower defense roguelike, packaged in a charming retro pixel art style not too dissimilar to something like Tiny Rogues. Now, I'm not someone who's played a lot of tower defense, but out of all that I have played, this one was the most that I've ever been immersed in. It very much plays into the way early video games were made, with it visually being quite minimal, and it truly being tied together by fantastic sound design and music. If, like me, you're a fan of dungeon synth and similar genres of music, as well as the accompanying art styles and themes, you'll feel right at home. The combination of these factors make it a great game to simply exist in, and even with the limited visuals, it does a great job of drawing you into its environments. Visuals aside, gameplay-wise, it's a mix of being quite challenging, but at the same time, very addicting. You start by choosing a faction and a map, and then you're placed in with your garden shed at the centre. The goal is to protect this at all costs from waves of goblins. If one manages to enter, then you lose a life. As you progress through each day, more of the map is revealed. This brings both treasures in the form of fertile land to grow crops, and dangers as it is expanding into goblin territory. You'll need to use a combination of well-placed gnomes and sensible investments to ensure that you are both protecting your shed and have enough crops to see you through each level. Once you reach day 16, a goblin king will be thrown into the mix, and if he manages to reach your shed, you'll lose all your lives and you'll have to restart. Upon reaching certain day milestones, you'll unlock new factions and new maps. Although, like I mentioned, this is not the game's full release, so there are only 3 maps at the moment, but the factions page is completely filled out, and the maps that are there get fairly difficult as you progress through them, each bringing new enemies and challenges to work through. From my time playing, I didn't run into any issues or bugs, and the game ran flawlessly. The gameplay also felt very balanced, with each gnome unit having their strengths and weaknesses, which learning how to work with felt very rewarding, as well as learning how to best manipulate the paths of the enemies to your advantage. I'm looking forward to what the future of the game holds, and I highly recommend you try out the demo and give it a wish list if you found yourself as hooked as I was. It definitely deserves more attention. Alas, now we must leave the Kingdom of Gnomes as battle calls elsewhere. Berserk Mode is one of those games I wish there was more to, because what is there is done incredibly well. It's a fast-paced boomer shooter roguelike. Okay, I know you've probably heard that sentence a million times, but just bear with me. That style harkens heavily back to that of the early Doom and Wolfenstein games. With a combination of fantastic two-dimensional pixel art for the weapons and enemies, all inside a 3D world that does a great job of providing a high fantasy backdrop while you mince through halls of monsters. I will admit I'm a bit of a sucker for games with fantasy themes, so I was blessed when I came across this gem while browsing through Steam. I was a little hesitant as to how it would play though, as I was concerned that the use of 2D sprites would take away from the satisfaction of the combat, or make it hard to judge distances. But I was pleasantly surprised when this wasn't the case, and mashing through streets of goblins with dual maces felt as visceral as a game like Ultrakill. There must have been real work gone into making that feel right, so I praise it for that. The only thing I can nitpick about the style is that some of the textures in some of the environments feel a little bit too clean or bland. This by no means detracts from the gameplay, as you're not exactly going through each level to stop and take in the scenery, but some areas stood out more in this way, so I thought I'd bring it up. This may also be a design choice to increase the visibility of the enemies. However, I've never had a problem with such, and for the most part I really enjoy the aesthetic of the levels. As far as gameplay goes, well, it plays fantastic, and has some fairly unique features. You start each level in a sort of safe room, that on the first level contains a chest full of gold to spend on items and upgrades. At the back you have 2 crystals and an altar where you can accept curses. The curses will, well, curse you with debuffs like lowered starting HP and speed for the next zone. If you survive them, however, you'll be rewarded with bonus gold at the next safe room. The 2 crystals will lead you through different zones, with the red one taking you to slightly harder levels, again in exchange for a bonus reward. Now, traversing the levels plays heavily into momentum. As soon as you go in, your health will begin to drain after a small grace period. The only way to heal is to kill, so keeping a good pace of movement and kills is essential. The purple bar below your health is also increased when you slay creatures, and this is what you'll be pivoting on to snowball through each zone, as once full, you'll be able to transform into your chosen beast form, granting you a significant boost in damage. If you manage to get enough kills while in this form, you will then reach Ascension, granting infinite stamina for both mortal and beast form, providing you have a fresh supply of monsters to sustain it. Now, the gameplay is all well and good, but honestly, I wish there was more of it. It took me just under 7 hours to 100% the game. That is, beating it with all 3 classes, then beating each Dissension level, those being the 5 difficulty options after standard. After which, I'd come across pretty much everything the game had to offer, in terms of weapons, upgrades, and enemies. Now, is it overpriced for what it offers? No, I think it's priced appropriately, and is an absolute steal when it's on sale. But I would gladly play more for a longer, more fleshed out version. As it is though, I think it's well worth checking out. We are nearing the end now, but first, we must travel to the depths, in where lurks a thief. This is Brush Burial, a game that accurately simulates life in the hearts of the finest British slums. Okay, jokes aside, this game has been one of my favourites in recent times, especially in terms of visual style and art direction. Things do get a bit shaky in Act 2 of the game, which I'll touch on in a moment, but the first act of this game is nothing short of fantastic. It states on the Steam page that it's inspired by older immersive sims, those being the Thief series in particular, which I haven't had too much experience with as I've only played one, but I remember it being very good. The game has you traversing these grungy underground sewers and cisterns inhabited by unsavoury folk who are not a fan of you lurking through their territory. You play as Fennel, a swamp devil who is recognised as a thief by those who are willing to chat, and her own dialogue makes it clear that she is very passionate about stealing, perhaps even a bit too much. The whole level, which is fairly large, feels very much lived in, despite it being, well, a sewer. And with the little pockets of civilization scattered in between the damp tunnels and passageways, it creates a feeling that there's some sort of underground criminal operation at large, ripe for a thief like you to tap into. It does a great job of making you feel like a filthy rat in the best way possible, with a lot of the area being quite claustrophobic, which you are able to traverse with ease given your below average height. The whole experience feels very much like you're an outsider to this place, made apparent when you visit the only friendly area in the level, the residents of which are resentful of your arrival in their small haven, but some are willing to bid you welcome providing you don't interfere with business and purchase some wares. Your goal in the first act is to collect 5 of these plants in order to open the exit, and this raises the first issue I had, was that the readability of some of the environments was a little too difficult. Not overly so, and I was still managed to complete the objective, without too much of a problem, but I feel it could have used a few more pointers as to where you're actually supposed to be heading. Once you find the first plant, it's pretty clear as to what you're looking for, but navigating the sewers could be a little confusing at times. Aside from that, the first act plays incredibly well. The movement feels very fluid, and the stealth is well balanced, which is great because this is where you thrive, and are able to be the most effective in terms of damage. If things do go south though, the combat outside of stealth feels very good as well. It can get a bit Skyrim-esque if you don't have any other weapon other than your starting dagger, but there's usually a sword, mace or gun to snatch up to make things a bit more interesting. I'll just let some of my favourite moments play out to give you a taste of what the combat has to offer. Now, Act 2 of this game is where things get a bit rough. There's virtually no stealth, or combat for that matter, and the environment is a complete change to where you were in the first act. Don't get me wrong, I like the aesthetic, but it was just a bit jarring going from the grungy industrial sewers to this much cleaner, more elaborate, almost temple-like area. And holy moly is the gameplay completely different. It has you doing this very confusing puzzle where you have to collect skulls from various different sub-levels in which there are these smaller sub-puzzles you have to solve. I won't try and explain exactly what you have to do, as it would add at least another 10 minutes onto this video. Okay, maybe not, but I recommend you just go and look at the Steam guide to help you out, as it took me quite a while to figure out how to get all the skulls. After you do get them all, you can then proceed to the final act, which I won't spoil, but the ending of this game feels a little off. It's like you went straight to the final level of a much bigger game, and the transitions between going from the sewers to the temple to the ending feels like there should have been more of a build-up, or something in between to draw things out more. I understand this is an indie production, likely from a solo dev, so I get why this is the case, but this is just how I felt going through the game. And what I did enjoy was amazing. Something I forgot to mention was the game's soundtrack and sound design. The soundtrack in particular, as someone said in my livestream, was sublime, which I completely agree with. And that's all. I hope you enjoyed this video, as it's a different format to what I've done previously. If you have any questions about any of the games, or want to know more, do feel free to leave a comment, or hop in my Discord server. If you have any game suggestions as well, do let me know, as I might make this a series if it gets enough interest. And if you're a developer watching this, feel free to get in touch if you have a game you think I'd like. Or, again, you're welcome to join my Discord server to share your game with the residents over there. A huge thank you to Vernis, the one and only channel member, for supporting videos just like this. And with that, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Hello. Adrenaline's my choice of drug. Hello.
Adrenaline is my drug of choice, baby.